do it. Drop it. Juice. Look, ride on them till the world is cracked up and the sky is open. They be telling me lies, took an entire portion of my family portrait and denied the culprit. My mind's insulted, cause I'm assaulting. A king in 16's what I'm assaulting. Battery shattered, the cataracts up in them, see it till I am exhausted. And my vernacular leaving them nauseous. I'm attacking whoever speaking the nonsense. Travel magnificent speed so they conscious. I'm deep and content with my content. Looking to the light to the east of my continent. Better catch up like condiments. Money never bought a nigga common sense. So when I rhyme, I'm making sure every line condensed with insight. Give insight even the blind convinced. When you put me in like Popovich. Politics, lots of ticks. Caught your optics for apocalypse. They got lots of tricks. It's like Copperfield. I'm copping still for that martial law. So when I start to draw, it's like Molotovs going across the jaw, ball for ball. Cause nigga, this the art of war. Yeah.
There can be no revolution unless there is bloodshed. There must be bloodshed in order to change the economic system. There must be bloodshed in order to change the political system. There must be bloodshed in order to change the academic and educational system. There must be bloodshed.
There's a war going on outside and the black man got a target on him. All the lies and taught us got our lives distorted. So I just wrote a few bars of warning. It's a call for action on my top of talking, exercising caution. So the iron on him. If it's time for war, then they'll be riding on him till the earth is cracked and the sky is scorching up. President is in the highest office and y'all already think they ain't buy him off with these vibes, skies and donations. I ain't the type to write a rogue statement when enticed by hype with no basis. Drones flying by, they don't phase us. To say y'all be riding no brakes, bitch. Why they spot to find the locations? I'm no patriot, I'd rather raise a fist. And y'all claiming it's unpatriotic. Power by the proud with some my people when it makes me racist. Explain your logic. Make a minge, I'd rather make a profit. So we teach that you too can raise them conscious. With a revolution comes bloodshed. Y'all can't do a thing about it. Malcolm warned you ain't no way around it. And I ain't no way that they acknowledge that he raided the conference and made alliances to raid the continent and rape the continent. Take the knowledge and to face the monuments. Equate everything synonymous and wicked to the niggas that they place the bondage just to make them dollars.
Peace, man. Peace and blessings to everybody. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to our second episode of Melanated and Illuminated. It's your boy Atun Ra in the building again. Ready to give y'all this truth. And we have a great show for y'all today. We have one of my good friends and brothers. He is a chronic agitator, but it's only because he come with the truth. The truth can always rub people the wrong way. I just want to thank everyone that tuned into our first inaugural episode. We have it up now. It's on SoundCloud. Go to soundcloud.com/melanated and illuminated. We also have it on YouTube. You can go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It was a great show. We were talking about health. And on this show, we up in the ante. Before we get into the show, I just want to thank everyone that came out to our community cleanup the other week at Malone Park. We went out there in 3rd Ward, and we put in a lot of good work to go ahead and get that park cleaned up, and we also cleaned up several lots around the park. And the best part about when we go out and we do community cleanups isn't just the fact of going out there picking up trash, but it's also getting out and building with the community and letting them know about the importance of a clean community and what that does to the mental state of the children, to walk through clean streets. And also getting them to see that right now we only got each other. The city, they're supposed to be out cleaning up the stuff, but they're not. And so, we can't just sit around and wait on people to do things for us. And also our community cleanups are a good sign of unity because we always have several organizations that come out and help us. It's not just Melanated Men of Action out there. We had Houston Unity Tribe come out there. We had the Nation of Islam come out there. We had the local organizer community out there, and we also had Blacklist out there. And just, all the different social organizations coming together, showing unity in the community, is strong. And also, while I mentioned Blacklist, we have another bum rush coming up this month. It's gonna be July 16th at African Imports in Greenspoint from 11 to 1. So make sure that y'all come out and support. All right, let's get into the show.
Greenspoint and Northside.
Yeah, so today, man, I have my boy Jahari in.
Peace, brother. Peace, man. I know we've been talking about doing this for like a minute and stuff, but I'm glad to be here, man. I'm glad to be here. I appreciate what you're doing with the show. It's needed, man. Much love to my brother, man. This is my dude, man.
And he bought me some Haitian rum, so this show is sponsored by Haitian rum.
We have to get, you know, because I know it's 4th of July weekend this weekend, but it's Caribbean Fest this week in Houston, and I always go out to Tom Bass Park, and I'll be out there later this evening, where they have the parade, and we'll be getting powder thrown on us, and I'll be waving my Bahamian flag because that's where my mom's people are from. So, you know, always have fun with that, bro.
All day. Well, you know, I let you all know when I started this show, I wanted to bring, you know, a lot of different things that aren't talked about in mainstream to our perspective. And one thing that's heavy always on my mind is indigenous spiritual systems. And because like we spoke about in the last show, I fully believe that a study of social sciences along with a proper proper diet will help us to reverse some of the chemical imbalances that have been done to us through slavery and over the years. And so I have a brother today, and we're going to be building on Obeah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Am I pronouncing it right?
Well, let's get into this. Yeah,
it's a lot of different pronunciations.
Yeah, it's different pronunciations. A lot of ways you'll hear it pronunciate is Obeah or Obeah. And Obeah is, we'll kind of get into that, where that pronunciation comes from. But, we'll be talking about that today.
So let's get into what is the origin of
well, first, if you don't mind me saying, like, I have to talk about how I came up.
Absolutely. And I apologize.
No, you good.
Because
we're going to talk about the origin, because that's very important.
A lot of times, I try not to put people on the spot to where they have to explain who they are and who they are. Because, like, a lot of times I meet people, they like, you know what I'm saying? Who are you and what do you do? Yeah. Like, they expect you to throw a specific title behind your name. Oh, I'm a doctor. Yeah. I'm a community activist or whatever. It's like, you can't just be a human being. So before we get into what you were going to talk about, tell me about what started your personal interest in indigenous African spiritual systems.
Well, growing up, of course, being raised here in America, I was raised in a Christian household. My mom's people, actually, my grandmother was a pastor in the Church of God of Prophecy, which is prominent here in America and also in the Caribbean, where my granddad's people came from. But, you know, I think growing up, there were some issues I had with Christianity as I got older in my teenage years, and I started reading Malcolm and Elijah Muhammad and other things that resonated with me. And for a period of time, I was a Muslim, actually. Now, I was never part of the Nation of Islam. However, I would often attend Mosque 45, and the brothers over at Mosque 45, Brother Eric, shout out Eric Muhammad. They'll know who I am if I roll through there, you know. And
shout out Eric Muhammad and Robert Muhammad.
Yeah, Robert Muhammad. Both of them great brothers, man. I love them to death. But, you know, I went through that period of being a Muslim. And then I kind of went through a period of being a heathen. Yeah, I always joke with people. But, you know, I think my interest in African religions grew as my own personal growth came along. But what hit me in particular is when I went to grad school at the University of Louisville in Louisville, Kentucky. Shout out Louisville, Kentucky. Is during that time, oddly enough, me coming out of being a Muslim, Malcolm X's oldest daughter, Atala Shabazz, actually taught in our department there in Louisville for a period of a year or two while I was up there. And let me start by saying she is a great human being, such a beautiful spirit. I don't think she realizes the impact she had on my life personally. She would always have an open door policy. She would keep her door open. She would talk to us. And one thing she used to always talk to us about is tracing your history. Because, of course, Malcolm had roots in the Caribbean. and his father was a Garveyite, and she talked about those roots, and she talked about how we should trace our roots. Now, growing up, as I said a while ago, my mother's side of the family, my mother and father are both from Florida. They're all Floridians. Nothing but Floridians in my family, right? So obviously there's Caribbean influence there. Right. On my mother's side, her granddad raised her, and he was in the Bahamas. Goes by the family name of Neely, in Eleuthera, an island called Eleuthera in the Bahamas, and we still have family there. So growing up, we would eat Bahamian food. We'd eat things like pigeon peas and rice, and if you go to the Bahamas, you'll see what that is. We eat conch fritters, and conch is a shellfish that's prominent in the Bahamas. And there were things that we would do that were, Bahamian, but I'm looking at myself. I'm a brother in America, so it's like I'm a black kid being raised in America. So I never made that connection until I went to grad school, and Malcolm's daughter told me that. And I really started to look into my history, and I started asking elders in my family questions that I never knew or that I never asked before. And when I started asking those questions and reading on Bahamian history, I came across Obeah. And the best way I can explain is Obeah is to the Bahamas and to Jamaica and to Trinidad and even to Barbados what Voodoo is to Haiti, or what Santeria is to Cuba. And in it, that it's this African religion that came over during enslavement, and that really kind of, helped us through enslavement in different ways that I'm going to kind of touch on. But I know you asked about the origins of it, and it's interesting. And I'm used to teaching classes, so I had to bring notes just to look down to make sure I cover everything. But the origins is sort of shrouded in mystery, but you can trace it back to several places. You can trace it back to Nigeria. There's actually a practice there in Nigeria called Obeah, which is Obia, which has to do with medicinal healing. You could trace it back to the Ashanti Kingdom, which is sort of I'd probably say the most popular place to trace it back to. And actually a term there that goes by Ubio, which means ominence. And when we talk about ominence, we talk about omens, which is sort of this foretelling of fate. So we can trace it back there as well. We can trace it back to Dahomey, which is now Benin. And we can even trace it back to ancient Kemet. And this is very significant because if you look at the word snake in Kemet, it's called Obi, Ob. Obviously, that's the root word of Obeah. Now, if you look in a biblical sense, a Hebrew sense, Moses was well versed in the way of the Egyptians, as it says in the Bible. And we know about Aaron casting the rod down to turn into a serpent. The serpent is a symbol of wisdom, but Moses is sort of revered in Obeah traditions. And actually, there's a book that you can actually get it online for free, download it. It was actually banned from countries, which I'll get into and why it was banned. But it's called the 6th and 7th Books of Moses. Of course, we know about the 5 books of Moses that are popular in the Bible. However, Obeah practitioners in the Caribbean often use the 6th and 7th Books of Moses that deals with different types of spells and things of that nature that we can touch on. But the reason why I trace it back to several places is because I think it creates this idea that that although Africa is not a monolith, meaning we're all the same, there are similar characteristics that we can point out within various cultures. I just talked about Nigeria, Ashanti, Dahomey, and Kemet. Yet we can see a connection there with this practice. And to say it originated in one place, I think is to do it a disservice. So I just say it's an African religion, and it's still prominent today, although they try to say it's not, but we know it is. There's a reason why it's not, and we'll get into that.
Okay. That's interesting. So, I definitely know a lot of people associated with the Caribbeans. Was there so explain to me, what role does it play today in the Caribbean?
Well,
what are people's feelings about it?
Yeah, well, actually, it's a funny story, man. I was in the Bahamas. I went to the Bahamas for the first time about 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago. And I went to Nassau, and I'm taking a tour of downtown Nassau with a police officer there. And we're touring downtown. You hear the church bells ringing. And me, I'm sort of a smart aleck type of dude. And I knew what I was asking before I asked it. I knew what the answer was going to be. But anyways, I asked the officer, because she's talking about the role of religion there with Christianity. And she keeps talking about Christianity. And I raised my hand. I said, well, what about African religions? And she looked at me like I had just called on the devil himself to come and take over the entire universe. And she was just like, those don't happen here. That's what she said. And I was just like, oh, okay. I knew what I was doing though, but I wanted to see what her reaction was. So, it's sort of shrouded now, but tracing it back to the Caribbean, man, the reason why that is because there is a place that Obeah held in resistance in African struggles. If you look at Jamaica, I believe the year is 1760. We have Tacky's Rebellion by enslaved Ashanti African called Tacky. Tacky was an Obeah man. And what Tacky did was, during this revolt, is that he would go around to different plantations, him and his faction of people who were Maroons, interestingly enough, which is important, which I'll touch on in a second. Will go around to different plantations, destroying them. And it lasted for several months, and they finally killed him and about 400 of his people, I believe. But I believe they killed 600 or more so white folks.
Oh, wow.
They were getting at him. But what Tacky did was, the Obeah man was sort of revered in the community as this leader and this organizer, because before they would go out to war, he would mix up different potions in a bowl. And he would basically get his followers to agree to certain oaths that would bind them to certain things. And while he did that, that obviously built confidence in the people to overthrow this white system. It's very similar to, if you study the history of Kenya and the Mau Mau revolt, how they would go to the woods to initiate their people to fight back against the British. It's hand in hand, the same thing. And what happened is there was this fear of Obeah. So what you had was, you had a lot of literature that came out around that time about Obeah and Voodoo, which also played a very important part in the Haitian Revolution. Right. And you would have this literature coming out demonizing it and associating it with just pure evil. And, that's kind of where we get this idea of, African religions being demonized. A lot of times they were demonized because they help us liberate ourselves. Right. And if we weren't doing revolts, what Obeah men would also do, and Obeah woman, it's important to me to mention that too, because Obeah women can practice it as well. Is that you would see people, if they weren't revolting, is that they would actually find different herbs, because Obeah men and women are very specialized in healing and knowing of different plants and their values. So you would see them mixing together certain potions to give to other enslaved Africans, to give to their masters to poison and kill them. So the Obeah men and women played a prominent role during enslavement, and eventually the practice was outlawed. It's still outlawed in Jamaica today, I believe. And by the way the sister treated me in the Bahamas, it wouldn't be surprised if it's outlawed there as well.
Man. So what relevance does it have to us here today, us melanated people here today in America? What basically why should Black Americans care? Why should they look into it? You know, what benefit is it to it?
That's a fair question to ask. You know, I would definitely say, and before I answer that question, with Obeah, you have different paths. Okay, you have a path that's focused in healing, that's dealing with the medicinal side of things. You also have a path that's focused in a sort of casting certain spells on people. It's sort of a way of shamanism almost, a sort of mystic tradition. As far as the role it can play with us today, like I said, with the healing factor, we need to be healed as Black people here in America. I think oftentimes we get this idea that, you know, once enslavement was over with, that, you know, it's kind of like we went on with our lives. You know, we went through Jim Crow and things like that, but we never had time to heal. Absolutely. And the Obeah men and women in the community were looked at as healers. You know, we need healers in our community, man. And that's something that on multiple levels, and, you know, healers in a sense that is an African worldview. You know what I'm saying? So I think African religions, particularly Obeah, which isn't talked about as much as Ifa or Vundun or Santeria, is important for that reason, because of that healing aspect and its role in resistance historically. So I think that just means a lot, you know, to me as an African human being here in America.
Peace. Okay. Well, man, we're going to go ahead and take a little break. We're going to get into some Nina Simone.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about this song. We're going to listen to the lyrics, man.
And then, you know, once that play, we're going to come right back with my boy Jahari.
Peace.
All right, man.
Man,
powerful track.
That song.
Powerful track.
You know, I will sit in my bedroom and literally dance to that song. Like, seriously, man. Like, I will dance to this song, Sister Nina Simone.
Man, you actually, man, you sent me that song, man.
Yeah, one of my favorite songs ever.
I was telling you, you know what I'm saying, you know, I normally play, y'all know I play music for the show. And so my brother sent me this track yesterday. Man, I listened to it a few times last night and then a few times this morning, you know, trying to get into the spirit, you know, as soon as it come on, you know, I got to burn my sage and everything, you know, just, you know, the vibrations, you know, put me in that mood, and, you know, you automatically feel it. You know, in the words, you know what I'm saying?
And the words have meaning, man. There's a reason why she says what she says, man. Like, if you look into it religiously, as far as Obeah is concerned, man. But it's, you know, I love that track. And actually, at the beginning of the track, if you listen to it, she shouts out a guy named Exuma. And Exuma was a musician from the Bahamas, from the island of Exuma. His real name was Claude McKay, but he went by Exuma. And he created music that was sort of like this folk music that had some elements of rock and reggae to it, sort of this fusion of different styles. I don't even know what to call it, but Exuma, he made a song called Obeah Man. And you see Nina Simone gives him a shout out at the beginning. She's like, you know, Exuma, like, I know you in here, which he might have been in the building, either physically or maybe spiritually at that point in time. I don't know. You know, Nina, man, when she describes some of the lyrics, if you know not only the history of Obeah, but if you know about the way it's practiced, because it's not really a system per se, which I'll get into, but if you know about the way it's practiced, when she speaks on certain lyrics, you know she knows what she's talking about. When she says, you know, to get to Satan, you got to pass through me. You know, I know the angels name by name. I can eat thunder and drink the rain. There's a reason why she says that, man, and which, you know, we'll get into. But Obeah, you know, it has a lot of influence on popular culture and stuff, you know.
So what are some things that we see and hear every day that are associated with Obeah that we may not directly associate with it?
Well, you know, you're familiar with the Harry Potter series, I'm sure. That is something that actually references Obeah within its text. You know, because we have Harry Potter, we're dealing with magic. Obeah is referenced in Harry Potter. A famous occultist here in America who a lot of people demonize, Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley dealt with Obeah, and he practiced Obeah. Now, as black people, and even white people, you know, he's been painted as this old evil worshiper of, you know, darkness. You know, we have a problem with darkness, you know. Yet this man is practicing our African traditions, man. Like, we're rejecting something that is ours that this man is taking on. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think that's really recognized. It's like Aleister Crowley, he was into what we recognize as witchcraft. That was Obeah. You know, something that a lot of people don't talk about when we talk about the Salem witch trials. A lot of the women who were killed were black women who were Obeah women or accused of being practitioners of Obeah, in addition to the white women that are killed. There is actually a play out right now. I don't know if it's still running right now, but it's put on by some sisters that's called the Obeah Opera. And they talk about the Salem witch trials in the opera and how black women were killed and persecuted for practicing Obeah. Because all these white women who practice witchcraft and Wicca, where do you think they got that from, man? They got it from us, baby.
Right, absolutely.
We were giving them that knowledge. They didn't come up on that on their own. Like, those were our Obeah women passing that down unto them, you know, and that, you know, that is something that, you know, we see it in popular culture and we see it in American history, but it's sort of brushed over, man, because they want us to forget that we're African at the end of the day.
In every sense of the word,
man.
Every sense of the word. So, what's some differences between Obeah and Orisha?
Yeah, well, you know, there are Orishas in Obeah, you know, in ancestor veneration. However, Obeah, you know, it doesn't get the same recognition as Voodoo, the Santeria, as I talked on earlier, or even as Ifa. And
why is that?
Well, I think it's for a few reasons. One of the main reasons is that I think it's not necessarily a system that's easy to describe as those other systems. Right. Obeah, it's individualistic, but it's collective at the same time. And what I mean by that is it's individualistic in the sense that you don't go to like a congregation to like, we're going to practice Obeah. You know, we have seen where voodoo, followers of the voodoo tradition or followers of the Ifa tradition come together collectively to practice. No, Obeah men and women, that is a very sort of excluded, like, it's just me with nature, it's me with certain ancestors, with certain deities. It's very individualistic in that sense. You know, it's not practiced in a collective group like other religions. However, it's still collective in the sense that we see the role it played in resistance. We see the role it plays in the community as people being looked at as healers. So while it's individualistic, it's collective at the same time, you know. But you know, I think it's because of that, you know. Also, like I touched on earlier, I think it's because it's been demonized so much in popular culture as well, to the point where people don't even want to practice it. You know, like I said, it's still outlawed in places, man. So, you know, that could have a lot to...
Still outlawed.
Yeah, man. In Jamaica, the last I checked, in Jamaica, it is still outlawed. And it wouldn't surprise me if it's outlawed in the Bahamas, too, man. But, you know, you see some of that with voodoo, too, because, you know, they would restrict people from the grave sites because they didn't want people resurrecting people from the dead and stuff, which there's a science behind that. And there's a very good movie, actually, Serpent Over the Rainbow by Wes Craven that I enjoy it. You know, now it's sort of, you see the whiteisms on there, you know, as far as, you know, the way it's sort of demonized as far as voodoo is concerned. But to me, it's a great movie to watch when you're talking about making zombies out of people and things like that. Because there's a science behind it. There's an actual science. And that movie deals with that, man. It's a classic movie. It's one of my favorites ever, man. But yeah, Obeah is different in that sense, man. It's very individualistic in its practices. And the way it's practiced, because not just anybody can be an Obeah man or Obeah woman. There are a couple of different ways to get initiated. There's one way to get initiated by having it passed to you from someone who practices Obeah, or you can inherit it through your bloodline, okay? Now understand, if it is not in your bloodline, and let's say you just want to be converted to Obeah, they just don't give that power to anyone, because at the root of Obeah is the root word OBI, Obi, and that is a force that is given and can be transferred to others. However, when an Obeah man or woman initiates another individual into the practice, they lose some of that Obi, they lose some of that power. So therefore, they are very selective as to who they choose to initiate. So it's not for everybody, you know. it's very different, because Ifa is a very popular practice, and I've talked about this before, you know, and I've talked to different Ifa priests and priestesses that I know, and one of the things that a lot of people who practice Ifa now say is that the ancestors are sort of weak. And what I mean by that is that there is so many people that are calling on them, and they're being used so much to the point that they have nothing else to give. You know, and I think when it comes to African religions, we have to be careful of, like, because there's white people who try to practice Ifa and stuff, and like like, yeah, you have a right to that, but as a black person, I feel some sort of way when I see a white person trying to practice our you know, I feel that, you know, that is something, especially when we're talking about Obeah, because it's like, that's something that can be transferred down into the bloodline. Like, this is an African, like, this is through our African blood, brother, that we had to shed, that we had to fight with, and this white dude just wants to come over here. Why? Because it's cool, or it's different, or it's because he's trying to rebel from his mama or something. You know, it's just like, you know, like, no, like, this helped us, like, this helped us during enslavement, you know.
So, man, let's build on that. So, kind of build on one, I know you kind of got on there before, but kind of build on more so the connection back to Africa, and also the benefit throughout the Ma'afa, the Middle Passage, you know, however you want to call it, and how it specifically helped us, you know, make it through that period of time.
Well, yeah, you know, now, like I said, we're connecting it back to Africa, as I said earlier. You can trace it back to several places. You know, I like the focus on the Ashanti in particular, though, because I think you can see some of the practitioners there who are still prominent today, who practice certain indigenous religions that have a lot of commonalities with Obeah. You know, when we talk about this idea of a supreme deity in Obeah, we're talking about this idea of this creator God. However, this God isn't necessarily concerned with the quote-unquote good or bad that takes place here on the planet Earth. And really, if you look at even Christianity, and there's a good brother, and I forget his name at this point, he wrote a book on voodoo and quantum physics, but brilliant brother, brilliant book if you can find it. It's expensive, but if you can find it, it's good. But he actually talks about the God of the Old Testament sort of being this God that really didn't care too much about good and evil, you know. And
you see that idea of God in several African religions, and particularly there in the Shanti Kingdom, which I wish I wore my necklace today with the Yame sign on it.
Yeah.
But it's sort of that idea of, this creator God. However, there's lesser gods who, like, there's gods of earths and things who care about things. There's ancestor veneration. Your ancestors care about you, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So you do see that passed over through the Middle Passage into here in America. And as I said, on the plantation, the Obeah men and women, they were smart, man. They were sort of looked at as leaders of the community. Now, as I touched on earlier, there's ways where they can make up certain poisons to give to plantation owners. And what a lot of people would do is that there were a lot of enslaved Africans that would go to the Obeah man or woman in their community or on their plantation, and they'd be like, hey, I need this to poison master. They would give it to them like sort of a favor for a favor. So in that way, they were able to build power on the plantation as well. You know what I'm saying? And there's actually, there's a quote I want to say, man. And it's a white man who was a slave owner. And I have to say this, bro. I have to say it. Who talks about Obeah and just the role it played on the plantation, just so people get a picture of how powerful this was, okay? Like, now I'm saying this, this quote comes from a white Jamaican planter named Edward Long, and you can go online and look this up. He said, their priests, or Obeah men, are their chief oracles in all weighty affairs, whether of peace, war, or the pursuit of revenge. When assembled for the purposes of conspiracy, the Obeah man, at the various ceremonies, draws a little blood from everyone present, then is mixed in a bowl with gunpowder and grave dirt. The fetish or oath is administered by which they solemnly pledge themselves to inviolable secrecy, fidelity to their chiefs, and to wage perpetual war against their enemies. As a ratification of their sincerity, each person takes a cup of the mixture, and this finishes the solemn rite. Few or none of them have ever been known to violate this oath or to desist from the full execution of it, even although several years may have intervened. So that just tells you the role it played during enslavement, and that's why during that same period in the 1700s and 1800s, you had all this literature being dispersed about Obeah and voodoo to demonize them. And the reason why they were demonized is because these white people were scared because they saw how prominent it was in resistance. And I think, I love focusing on religion because religion is something that we all can relate to, whether we agree or disagree with it. However, I believe whatever religion you practice, it should be practical and it should have a humanistic sense to it as well. And Obeah definitely had that. I actually had a professor who was from Trinidad, where Obeah is prominent, which I'll get into in a second, who one day when I was in school, she kind of glanced over the importance of African religions, because she was a sociologist, and she was like, religion doesn't mean anything to activism. When I'm like, you're from Trinidad, like, you should know, like, yeah, like, yes, it has meant something, you know what I'm saying? And it can still mean something if it's used right, and even with Christianity here in America, as much as we talk about it and badmouth it, which it deserves to be badmouthed to a large extent, but there were periods of times where we used even the black church in resisting in our struggle. Now sometimes that's overrated a little bit, but that's for another episode.
But like you said, it does have, a specific purpose, because it's a tool.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and, it's just like a hammer, it can build your house or it can kill a man.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Fire can burn your house down.
I love that you bring that up, because Obeah sometimes, because like I said, there's different paths you can take. And actually, in the Ashanti region, there's another practice called Mayoism, which has sort of been infused in Obeah now. But so, at first, the mild men were sort of the contrast to Obeah men. They were there to like to take off the curses that the Obeah men put on you and things. But eventually they fused together, and it's all kind of known as Obeah now. But, you know, this idea of good and bad, you know, like I was saying earlier with this creator God, it's sort of, when you're looking at African religions, like, we can look at good and bad as things as human beings, but from an ultimate standpoint, there is force, and force can be used and manipulated in certain ways. And with Obeah, like, you might look at something like poison. Yeah, poison's bad. Poison's not bad if you're trying to get off the plantation and kill your master, though, is it? Right? No. So, you know, I think, you know, this idea that we get from Christianity that everything's good or bad, and, you know, God's just all good, even though he like killed millions of people in the Old Testament. You know, it's like, you know, we kind of have to get away from that, you know, and recognize that, you know, the universe doesn't care about that.
Right.
We as human beings care about
right,
that,
because
but not the universe.
Is balanced.
It's balanced,
and
man.
Good and bad is like so subjective.
Yeah, it's so subjective. That's a human perspective.
And that's the part I always say, you know what I'm saying, like in relation to God. You know what I'm saying? Because people are like, well, God is good, God is all good, and anything bad is the devil. Well, I'm like, how can God be omnipresent? How can it be the creator of all and the manifester of all? But then we like, well, the bad things happen. Well, that's not God.
Well, you know, it's interesting. In staying on that point of things being bad or the devil, you know, going back to the Nina Simone lyrics of "to get to Satan, you gotta pass through me." There's actually, there's actually a white dude, and I forget his name at the moment. When you post the link, I'll post his name in his book. He talks about how he was initiated into Obeah in the 90s in Trinidad. And he talks about how he was taken to the woods, because the woods are a place where Obeah men and women connect with. That's why the Maroons went to the woods. When we were talking about Taki's rebellion earlier, there are certain deities that are associated with the woods, like Sasambosam, which is depicted as a bat, which sort of influenced Dracula as well, that we know of sucking blood and things like that. But however, to get back to my original point, he talks about his initiation and how he had to basically make a deal with a deity called Papa Bones. And Papa Bones, he said, oftentimes is looked at as being the devil. And the reason why they say that is sort of to play on Christianity and this fear of it. However, Papa Bones had this knowledge of death. And when you know death, you know all. So when you go to Obeah, like, it's not something to just be played with. You're really talking about getting initiated into it, you know. Absolutely. It's a hell of an experience from what people say, you know. I've never been through the experience personally, but from what I know about it, you know, that's not just something you take on. So it's this experience of acknowledging death and knowing all. And when Nina says to get to Satan, you got to pass through me, she's speaking as an Obeah woman. To get to Satan, to get to Papa, you got to pass through me. Literally, I have to give you this if you want to get this knowledge and this stuff. And that's what she's saying. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what his sister is conveying in her message and her lyrics, man. And, you know, but, you know, the idea of bad, like, what is bad, man? You know, like, what is that really? You know, and to be honest, to be as a Christian, like, that sister who came to me in the Bahamas, who looked at me like I was the most evil person on earth when I mentioned African religions, I wanted to ask her right after that, but I'm not a total asshole, contrary to popular belief.
Say, that's subjective.
Yeah, that's subjective to her, like evil and good. What I wanted to ask her afterwards was, you know, sister, what is so bad about Obeah and its relevance to the Bahamas in contrast to Christianity and what that has done here and other places? Obeah men and women never went around enslaving people. They don't force their religion on people. They're not out here promoting racism, sexism, homophobia, whatever ism comes with Christianity. They don't do that. So what's this fear of it? Why is it evil? And Christianity, we should all be running away from that if we want to be honest. If you want to talk about evil, like, look at the manifestation of things. Look how Christianity was spread and the destruction it has caused. How can you say Christianity is this, oh, we should be Christians and we would be all right? Like, they try to blame the earthquakes in Haiti on voodoo priests and priestesses. And they did the same thing with Obeah. You know, when certain diseases would outbreak in Trinidad and Jamaica, they would blame it on the Obeah men and women. Even though that was sort of just this made-up notion, you know, bullshit. Although, you know, that same French guy I referenced, man, he actually states in his text, when talking about diseases wiping out people, there was an outbreak of a particular disease, and I forget what it was, that wiped out a lot of Africans in, I believe it was Jamaica. And he says in his book, he's like, you know, one of the things that is sort of theorized amongst practitioners of Obeah is the reason why it wiped out a lot of the Africans who were enslaved or who had been colonized was because they were so influenced by Christianity. So it was a way of purifying things too. Like, and when I read that, I was just like, you know, that was the first time I've ever heard that. And in that sense, because usually they just talk about, oh, they sent the disease to wipe out people because they're evil. But to hear him put it in that context, I was just like, wow, man. I was like, that's some powerful stuff. Like, man, you know. But once again, good and evil. What is good and evil? You know, passing down your legacy or passing down a false legacy.
Absolutely.
You know,
man, that was powerful.
Yeah, man.
Powerful, man.
It's powerful. When I read it, I was just like, whoa, but like I've never seen that before. You know, but you know, Obeah, you know, it's just so interesting, man, and it's so different from other religions. And to me, it doesn't get the recognition it deserves. It's sort of that slept-on religion, like the African religion that no one really knows anything about. But like I said, it's because other religions are more prominent and things like that. But it still, to me, can hold an importance today.
Absolutely. Well, man, you had brought up a point about the 6th and 7th books of Moses.
Yeah, man.
That's an interesting point, man. Can you expound on that for a little bit, brother?
Yeah, well, you know, the 6th and 7th books were very popular in the Caribbean, and the reason why that is because, like I said, Moses was sort of revered in Obeah when you look at the Caribbean and how it's practiced. And one of the reasons why is because Moses was well known in the way of the Egyptians, and he was this snake charmer, contrary to popular belief, you know. And I'm not even talking about from a historical, I'm talking about from a pure theological perspective. If you read your Bible, come on, man. That wasn't Jesus, man.
Was Moses an Egyptian or was he in Hebrew?
Oh, man, I'm not, you know, I'm focusing on Obeah. But even with, if you want to, I'll say this much. If you want to view him as an Egyptian or a Hebrew, you can root Obeah in either one. Because you can root Obeah even into the Kabbalah. You know what I'm saying? Which comes from a Kemet. You know, it's like Hebrew. It's like, yeah, them brothers were in Kemet, though. They were in Egypt, so they were African regardless. And Judaism is really just a religion. Right, you know, that's not like, that's, you know. Right. So, and from a historical perspective, and this is kind of getting off topic, but, you know, we have to even ask ourselves, did this mass exodus really occur even in Kemet? Because it's not on the walls. Oh, yeah. That's like everything else. But that's another conversation. That's why I'm leaving it. I see what you're trying to do, though. But, you know, obviously, from a theological perspective, Moses is revered in certain traditions. And, of course, we know about the 5 books of Moses that are kind of revered in the Torah. You know, they're revered in Judaism and even in Christianity and Islam to a degree. However, with the 6th and 7th books, it focuses on this sort of, I guess you could say, quote-unquote, magical aspect. And a lot of practitioners of Obeah in the Caribbean would use these books to cast spells on people. And when we were talking about Obeah and resistance earlier, This book actually got outlawed and banned during enslavement, the 6th and 7th books of Moses. However, if you go online today, you can find a PDF version of it. You know, now it's not one of those books you just read to read. Like, you have to know your stuff to really be diving into that, you know, because it's dealing with the actual practice of things. But you know, there was that reverence for Moses, but it's not to say that Obeah is like Christianized, but as African people, man, when it comes to our religions or the way we view world in general, we take on the valuable aspects of certain things, which can sort of be a good thing, but it can lead to our demise as well. It's our gift and our curse at the same time. I mean, if you look at the way we allowed Europeans to come into Africa, and like, it's like, yeah, that's beautiful that you're accepting of other people's humanity, but these people trying to destroy you at the same time. Right. You know, and that's what we see with Obeah and other religions as well. With Orisha worship, if you line Orishas up with saints and Christianity, a lot of the times you can see that they're the same thing. And what we did during enslavement was, when these practices were banned, it's like, okay, you can't practice voodoo, you can't practice Obeah. Okay, we'll just shout out St. Paul. Right. St. Paul might be Shango, something, you know what I'm saying? But the white folks didn't know that, but that's what they thought. Right. You know what I'm saying?
And that's what I read a lot and understood about the Baptist church. Yeah. And that's kind of like what happened with the Baptist church, on how once a lot of those different African practices became outlawed, well, they was like, well, we still got to be Christian, but we're going to still keep some of our traditions. And that's the reason why when you go to a Baptist church, it's nothing like any other church.
You know, and it's not
music and the message
speaking in tongues. You know, like I said, my family, you know, growing up on my mom's side, which is where my Bahamian roots are at, speaking in tongues is popular in that tradition, and they're Pentecostal. You know, Pentecostal fire is falling for all you people with Pentecostals out there. That's a funny song. But speaking in tongues, that is something that is very African, man. That is spirit possession that we're talking about, man. And that's something that sort of got adopted by Christianity, whether we're talking about here in America, or even you look at it from a biblical sense, and tracing it back. Like, where do you think these people in the Bible got that from, man? They got it from the indigenous Africans. You know what I'm saying? That's not something that is just necessarily Christian, you know? So, yeah, man.
Right. Absolutely. And, yeah, I think that's important. And I think that speaks a lot to the intelligence that the ancestors had. Because a lot of times people kind of present them as, oh, well, they just gave up, and oh, well, these people didn't fight, and they were weak enough, and
we always
that type of mental, you know what I'm saying, capabilities to do things like that in order to survive. You know, that's what it's about. It's about survival.
Baby.
And, you know, as you start digging through the Ma'afa, you start seeing so many different things that our ancestors did to survive. And you also kind of see about why the West doesn't talk about it in that positive light, because then you'll start researching to see how can I tap into these sciences, and how can I, you know, raise my own vibrations to liberate myself.
You know, we always resisted. I mean, no one's willingly going to be a slave of anyone. Right. Like, who the hell wants to do that? I don't care how much of a Tom you are. If you nobody wants that. You know, there's going to be some level of resistance there. And we always resisted, whether it was actually going out and killing somebody, poisoning someone, even if it was, I'm going to break the tools on purpose while I'm out here on this plantation. Like, or I don't feel like this today, where like I'm going to take a beating from my plantation. That's a way of resisting, man. We always resisted. Like, I wish people would get that through their skulls, man. We resisted. That's why we're here. We're still resistant to today, man.
Still resistant.
Like, we always will resist because it's in our blood, man.
Right. We're going to always continue to go against popular culture. And, you know, one thing we was building on earlier, you know, one thing about us needing to get more credit to ourselves.
Yes.
Because when you look at everything that our ancestors have been through, we're still here today, you know,
Yes.
for everything that has been thrown at us. You know, the black man, the melanated man, not only here in America but worldwide, is still here. We're still creating things. We're still, you know, multiplying. You know what I'm saying?
And you know, and I think we even can continue to do that. You know, and when I talked about ancestor veneration, paying attention to our ancestors, and I'm not just talking about our popular ancestors like Garvey and Malcolm X, which we can pay attention to those. I'm talking about ancestors in your family. Sometimes I think we look at our own families as like, oh, that's just Uncle so and so who died. Like, man, I loved him. Like, we played when we was little. Like, no, he meant something to your family. Learn to know more about those individuals. They could have something that you never knew about because either if they came out and talked about it, they would be demonized by the community, so on and so forth. And I can say personally that I found out things about my family that I didn't know before by just asking people questions. Like, your elders are there with tons of information. They're a library in themselves, man. My big mama, I love her to death, from Florida on my dad's side. She's about to be, 95? A library of information. Like, that is, like, that's a resource. We have to start using our elders,
She's the
man.
same way. My grandma, she's the only one that out of multiple sons and daughters, 10 times as many grandkids, umpteen great-grandkids. She's the only person I know at 86 that can remember everybody's phone number off the top of their head.
And that's a beautiful thing.
Every time I lose my phone, I call grandma so that I can get.
And we used to do that too before we saved numbers in our phone. Yeah, I don't either. I know my sister's number, and that's about it, man.
86. She knows everybody, and I'm talking about like not just her kids. I'm talking about grandkids.
Yeah.
And somebody call her for my
That's
number.
how you have to remember numbers. We don't do that anymore, man. We have phones and stuff now.
Just a wealth of information.
And we have to look to our elders in our community and our ancestors who know, and with these practices, man, with African religion, sometimes I think we view them as sort of distant. There could be someone in your family who practiced it and you never knew because you never looked in it, man. Or they never came out about it because, like I said, they could have been demonized, man. Right. You could have somebody who practiced voodoo in your family. You don't have to be from the Caribbean to practice these things. These came over to America as well. Like, I mean, speaking of revolts, Brother Nat Turner himself said when he went on a revolt, he had spirits talking to him and things of that nature. Like, so, I mean, there are things in your bloodline that you may not even know about just because we just view it as, like, especially as African Americans, we just kind of view, like, we were slaves, and we went through slavery, we came over here, and we was, like, yeah, we did, but, man, we knew something, man, our people knew something, we still know something now, so tap into that, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. So, man, anything else you got on the bio, man, that you wanna?
Man, you know, what else I would like to say is that don't forget about it, man. I know, like, Ifa and Voodoo and Santeria are the more common, popular practices, but don't forget about Obeah and its value to our community historically. You know, it's something, like I said, that's been used since we were on the continent. We can trace it back, like I've already said, to ancient Kemet, to Nigeria, to Dahomey, to Ghana, to Barbados, to Trinidad, to Jamaica, to the Bahamas. Don't forget about it. Don't forget about any of our traditions. They can still be of a service and a value to us. There is a reason why they were taken away from us and why they were demonized. White people are they're very intelligent, and they're very strategic. You have to ask yourself as an African person, let's say you're an African person who practices Christianity, you know, and which you can be, that's your decision. But you have to look in the mirror and ask yourself, why am I a Christian? Who made me a Christian? Why were religions that were practiced by my people prior to Christianity
not catered to, were not put up on a certain pedestal to revere and to admire and to practice. There's a reason for that, because they have value. They have value. Obeah has value. Voodoo has value. Ifa has value. Santeria has value. And we have to remember that, man. And, you know, they're not just, and it's not to be looked at as something that's just spooky, because plants, do you eat vegetables? Right. You eat vegetables for a certain reason, right?
Absolutely.
When you get certain medicines to get healed for certain things,
right.
It serves a purpose, man. Like, these religions serve a purpose. They aren't just there to be spooky and just like out of this world. No, people relate to them, man. You relate to your ancestors. You feel them, man. Like, they have importance, man. And there's a reason why they took those away from us, because they want to disconnect us from our ancestors and from our continent and from our people. And we are Africans regardless of where you're at in the world. And as I said on my Facebook earlier today, African religions are world religions. Damn right. Like Christianity, like Islam, which is an African religion too, Judaism, Buddhism, you know, because you see those references world religions, but we don't look at Obeah as a world religion, right. Even though, you know, speaking of its origins, some people even trace it to the Aborigines of Australia. I read on that recently, which I still want to tap into more, which I'm sure you can. Like, so how's that not a world religion, baby? Like, and we influence it. Like, Obeah is in the Bible, baby. Right. Go look at Exodus, baby. It's there. So, like, your serpent's in the Bible. So how are you gonna say this thing that you got it from us as a world religion, but we're not a world religion? Come on, Daddy. Come on, man.
Man, I appreciate you coming out and building.
Man, no doubt. And I love for you bringing me out. And originally, man, today, man, we were going to talk about Obeah and the Dogon, but I was like, I don't think I can fit it all into one. But I'll come back and talk about the Dogon later on, man.
We got we're going to have that. That's
an interesting conversation, too,
Dogon,
man.
I'm going to have my brother break down some more of this religious history for y'all. But, man, before I get you out of here, man, you know, NBA free agency has started.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're trying to see.
Reparations, we getting paid out here.
You see a lot of dollars going around. And I see a lot of people saying that, you know, certain people don't deserve these dollars. And, you know what I'm saying, man, shout out to my man LeBron James. You know, I always say LeBron changed the game.
I love LeBron, man.
I'm going to let y'all know, like, personally, I wasn't a LeBron fan until he made that decision to go to Miami. And the reason I loved it is just because I didn't really care either way, you know what I'm saying, from the basketball standpoint. But I knew that the magnitude that meant for other players in the league, for one of the top players to take his destiny into his own hands. Because before that, you know, teams will trade you and you not even know. You'll see it on SportsCenter or you'll read about it on Twitter. You know, here was a man that actually took his destiny in his own hands, and it changed the way that NBA teams started to view superstar players. They was like, well, before, in your last year, they were like, you need to, it's a contract year, so you need to bust your ass to try to earn a contract. Now they like, damn, he might leave and we not getting nothing for him. What can we get for him now? Or you look at, like, now how LeBron only signs, you know what I'm saying, a 2-3 year contract at a time.
Looking out for his money.
Versus doing that 7, 8, 9, 10 years like they used to do. So, man, what's your thoughts on?
I love it because there are so many, you know, Hakeem Olajuwon is my favorite athlete of all time, man.
The Dream.
But Dream, you know, people don't realize it. There's so many athletes, and even prior to Dream, but even if you look at the 80s, for instance, there's so many athletes that were underpaid and they were stuck on bad teams that they didn't want to have anything to do with. Hakeem, once Ralph Sampson got injured after we made the finals in '86 and we lost to the Celtics, man, which we should have beat them if we were healthy and we weren't on drugs, which is a conspiracy. Robert Reed said the NBA gave them cocaine and stuff outside of clubs and then came the next day to do drug tests to get John Lucas and all them boys wrapped up in all that. Look it up, man. It's a great article written on that. But anyways, to get to that point though, Dream was stuck on just horrible teams for
prime years of his career. And at one time, we were going to trade him for Vlade Divac. Dude, fucking flopping ass Vlade Divac. And Dream was just stuck on this team, not making money, unhappy in the situation. And I'm happy to see players to be able to control their own destiny. Like, I loved it. As a black man, how can you not, loyalty? Forget loyalty, man.
These teams ain't never been
white
loyal.
dudes don't care about you. And to me, Rockets are my team, right? But I always root for players, because ultimately the player inside that jersey makes that team. That Rockets jersey without Hakeem in it don't mean shit to me. So I love it, and anybody saying that these players don't deserve the money, look at what the owners are making. Right. And we ain't coming out to see Les Alexander and Mark Cuban and Jerry Reinsdorf and whoever the hell and what's the old Cavs owner, Dan Gilbert, old racist ass. We ain't coming out to see them. Right. Downtown Cleveland got restored because of LeBron.
Oh yeah, and they were
so
they put up
$200 million.
They put up some numbers to show that 2 years ago the Cleveland Cavaliers were worth $500 million. Yeah, and now they're worth like 1.something billion. Exactly. So LeBron is brought, and it's funny because I was reading an article that was written 2 years ago. Yeah. About it was maybe about 3 years ago, saying that was a potential for LeBron to bring $500 million to Cleveland. And there were other experts saying that that's ludicrous. You know what I'm saying? There's no way that he can be worth that. But like I said, the team's value 3 years ago was $500 million. They went from $500 million. He was
responsible for that.
And this is before they won the championship.
Yeah, exactly.
At $1 billion. So ain't no telling next year.
LeBron, like I said, Hakeem's my favorite athlete of all time. LeBron's up there for me, man. And to me, I don't care what anybody says. I've watched Jordan. To me, LeBron James is the greatest basketball player ever. I don't care what anybody said. The way he can impact the game, from scoring, defending, passing, coaching. He designed that team in Cleveland. He was like the damn GM, basically.
Like every statistical category.
Every statistical category. I've never seen a player. Like, I was talking to my dad, and my dad's old, man. He's seen Wilt and Kareem and Hakeem and Michael and Bird and Magic and Oscar and Moses and Dr. J and whoever else you want to name, man. And he was like, LeBron is the best player I've ever seen. Right. He's like, man, I don't care what you say.
Man, just getting back to this whole notion that a player has to be loyal to a team.
It's a slave mentality, man. Like, when I heard black people, it's one thing, I think, if you were a Cavaliers fan and you were a black person, you like, man, I want LeBron to stay on my team. Because, if Hakeem left in his prime years, I'd be a little mad. And honestly, at the end of Hakeem's career, when he went to the Raptors, but he wanted back payments, kind of like Jordan was getting in Chicago.
I'm saying, what happened to the quote-unquote greatest basketball player of all time that wanted black pay, and also this thought that he deserved a stake in the team because he brought it, from nothing. They shipped his ass.
They shipped him out, man, and he had to go to Toronto. And as a kid, I didn't understand it fully. And I'm like, well, how's Hakeem going to Toronto? It's Hakeem, but as a grown black man, I don't blame him one damn bit, man. And any other person with any common sense should say the same. Michael Jordan, his last 2 years in Chicago, he got those $25 and $30 million contracts because those were back payments, baby. Like, you owe me money. And right now,
ownership.
And right now, all these contracts are back money. Like, they've been had this money, man. They're not throwing around $20 million. They're doing the same thing in baseball, which is old white money too, man.
Absolutely. NFL players are still getting really hoed.
Right, I say, you notice, what I'm saying? Only the majority black sports are the ones with the salary caps and all this. Like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, it's very BS, but those players deserve every cent they get, and even more. I mean, we don't come out. I'm not ever going to Toyota Center. I never went to the Summit to watch Les Alexander in the fucking front row. I went there to see.
Or with these sorry teams, like, we don't be like, oh well, why this owner making millions of dollars?
No one ever says it. And these owners sometimes do a poor job running these teams. Like, if you look at the Oklahoma City Thunder, I mean, they haven't put the right pieces around Durant and Westbrook. And the way they moved them out of Seattle was really crooked, and it's like, so I mean, no one ever criticizes them for making money, like, but it's that old slave mentality. Black people, we don't deserve anything, and white people do deserve everything.
Right, and that's crazy. Like, I'm like, man, like I said, like boys hate on these players for getting that, or like I said, they hating on LeBron, like oh yeah, he not loyal. Anything else like that. I'm like, name one corporation that's loyal to
you, man. Your job would be loyal to you. If you're be honest.
Now he took his destiny in his own hands, and now he can be potentially making. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, he's going to be the richest athlete in the NBA by the time he retires, man. I mean, because they make more money now. He's got endorsement deals, and to be honest, it wouldn't surprise me. Watch when LeBron James retires. It wouldn't surprise me if he made a deal with Dan Gilbert when he came back to Cleveland that when I retire, I want part of this.
Right.
LeBron is a very smart individual, man. And that's what I love about him. That's another thing I kind of appreciate about him as being one of my favorite athletes is that I bet you, man, there's some kind of stipulation that came along with him coming back. Because Dan Gilbert trashed him with that letter, man. Did you read that letter? Oh my God. I remember when I read it, I was just like, man, like it just sounded like he wanted to lynch him up, man. Right. Like it's terrible, dude.
But LeBron showed that what I'm saying, he had a bigger duty to the community.
Yeah.
And that's the other part about that I respect about him, because all these times these athletes and these platforms, you don't have to speak on certain issues. You don't have to take certain initiatives to get back to the community and be a man of the people. And he always has had that, and it's always seemed genuine.
It
is. One of the parts about him talking about one of the main reasons he went back to Cleveland was because he felt bad on all the boys and girls clubs that he started.
And I believe
that.
I believe that. Yes.
And and that going to Miami was basically like him going to college.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Him going off and him learning how to be a man and be a leader, that he can bring that back home. And do what he wanted to do for us. And that right there, just shows, going back to the I'm not a role model. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? To boys like standing up today saying that yes we are, like him bowing to Jim Brown, you know what I'm saying?
Because he recognizes it. I love that. I love that about it. Jim Brown still to this day, and I know Ali passed away, man. Much love to our ancestor, Muhammad Ali, who meant much to all of us. Don't even talk about that. But Jim Brown is black as you could get. Like, even to this day. Like, you remember when the NBA a couple years ago was going down with Donald Sterling? They invited like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to those meetings. They invited Bill Russell to those meetings. They did not invite Jim Brown to those meetings, because I can guarantee if Jim Brown got invited to those meetings, those players wouldn't have just like flipped their jerseys on backwards. Like, they should have asked up for so much more during that. But I'm not even going to get on that. That's another show in itself.
Right. Hey man, before we get out of here, man, tell the people, man, how they can follow you, man. You know what I'm saying? Media, Facebook, Twitter.
You can follow me on social media and I have 2 Facebook pages. One's kind of for my just larger people I follow, and others for close friends. But if you type in Jahari, Jahari, last name Kavi, Kavi, you will find me on Facebook. And I also have a blog page on Facebook called Just Jahari, and I call it Just Jahari because it's just my views on the world that I give out. I wrote a new blog today about Obama and Hillary Clinton and what they mean in regards to black resistance. So I put that up, and pretty soon I'm going to put on some blogs about Obeah and even some blogs about Freemasonry and what that means to African people. I've talked on that before. And we don't have to say, I say that as a person who is going through and got initiated, and being a Mason. So, but there's still, there's certain things obviously I won't put out, but there's certain things we can talk about. Like, not everything's a damn secret, but so in how it relates to us as African people. So check that out. Just Jahari, Just Jahari. Go and like it, and we'll have some fun. But I appreciate you for bringing me on, brother. No doubt. This is my brother, man. I'm gonna post your blog when you get the link up. I'm gonna post it on the page as well, man.
Yeah, I'm happy though, man. everybody go out, man. Follow this brother, man. He is not only entertaining but also educational. You know, he may piss you off, but then you may turn around and love this dude the next day, man. Like all the way, but like seriously, scholastic. You know what I'm saying? And that's always a respect, because you know a lot of times we kind of get in the clouds and we need people to bring us back down to earth and let us know what things are and what they really mean, and not to get lost in the lights. And you know, so you're definitely one of those people, man. We need you to keep being you.
Oh, okay,
and,
man.
You know, so
right,
it's
man.
always funny because he'll do something and then people will come to me. You know, one of the other brothers that we associate with, like, man, get your boy. And we like, man, look.
Can't nobody get me.
Like, yeah, we can't stop him. You know what I'm saying? And, we're going to always have his back regardless. You know what I'm saying? Man, I also, man, I got my daughter in here. You know, she joining us for the show, man. Say hi, man. Say what's up. Say what's up. What's up?
What's up?
Coming from Florida, the Floridians, we in the house today, man.
Texas to Florida connection,
Texas
man.
to Florida, baby.
You know, I want to give a shout out again to Melanated Men of Action.
Yes, sir. T-Dot.
You know what I'm saying? Look out for our next community cleanup. Also, shout out to Blacklist. Make sure y'all come out to the Bum Rush on July 16th at African Imports in Greenspoint Mall. Make sure that you also go like the Facebook page, Blacklist Association, and keep updates, you know what I'm saying, with everything that's going on. Before I get out of here, just remember the great Wade Noble says the essence of power is the ability to define someone's reality and make them live according to their definition as though it was the definition of their own choosing. Who has the power over your life, and what power are you taking today? All right, man. Until next time, everybody have a great day. Peace.
Peace.